Boom! It's going to be a great night.
First, let me thank all of you so much for coming at this gorgeous place to enjoy the ocean and to listen to me and a few others. What those of you in the healthcare industry and those who are not understand that the current system dealing with anxiety, depression, and people committing suicide really is not working. The structure just isn't there. It really does not work. So our goal here is to give you a glimpse of how we're going to change that. And we're going to do something that doesn't exist anywhere in the United States right now. We're going to make this truly a beta program here in Jacksonville. We're going to develop it with our group right here, and then we're eventually going to share it with the world. We're real people with desires who really have this deep gut. We have to help. We have to.
So here's what we know. We know that suicide deaths in the United States have doubled over the past 20 years. The suicide rate in Duval and St. Johns County is higher than the state of Florida average and the national average. The suicide rate in St. Johns County, the wealthiest county in the state of Florida, is higher than it is in Duval County. Most of the large suicide prevention organizations nationally focus on research and education. The Center for Disease Control tells us that suicide is the most preventable form of death. We know that every day in our community, when people have that moment of courage and are ready to ask for help, mental health care is not accessible. We know that families across our community who are worried, sick about a loved one who may be at risk for suicide don't have a place to turn for real help and real support. We also know that when people get help, when they get into therapy and they can talk about their suicidal thoughts, what seemed worth dying for a month ago no longer feels that way. What would you need if you were feeling hopeless? Think about that for a minute. Recall with me the last time that you walked into a hospital or a shopping mall for the very first time with a destination in mind. What did you need to know before you could reach your destination? You need that sign, right? That map with the arrow that says you are here. And that is what we offer at Here Tomorrow. We share the message that it is okay not to be okay, and it's also okay to ask for help. We embrace ambivalence. We provide a safe place for people to speak their truth and a safe place to have a conversation about mental health. Last thing I want to share with you is that nationally, on average, it takes 33 days from the time someone makes their initial behavioral health consultation appointment to the day that they walk into that appointment. So think about that. Think about how well that works for someone who is feeling hopeless, for someone who is in a mental health crisis. 33 days. We as a community can change that, and we are changing that at Here Tomorrow. We're partnering with a virtual therapy platform and local therapists. We're linking folks with therapy within 1 to 3 days. Do you believe that together we can normalize the conversation about mental health? Do you believe that together we can ensure that for everyone, when help is needed most, it is available, and they will be here with us tomorrow.
But if it's one thing that I want to try to leave you with today, and that is that recovery is possible. Because a lot of people that don't know much about mental illness, behavioral health problems, the stigma is that, once an addict, always an addict, that people, when they're suffering from mental illnesses, they can't become productive and responsible members of society again. They'll always be in and out of the hospital. And I just want to I'm going to share a little bit about my private life so you can know that that's just not true. Myself in my life, I have 2 honorable discharges from the military. I served in the Army as a combat medic, and I served in the Air Force. I used to load nuclear weapons on B-52s. I also have a couple of college degrees. I have an associate's degree in addiction studies from Palm Beach State College, and I have a bachelor's in psychology from Chicago State University. I'm a member of a couple of psychological honor societies, and I've been a firefighter and an EMT in 2 big cities, in Philadelphia and Wilmington, Delaware. Now, I'm telling you that stuff not to brag, but like in the late 70s, during my second tour in the military, I began to suffer from a mental illness. I didn't tell anybody in the military what was going on with me because of the stigma that was involved in it. If I would have told them I was suffering from mental illness, it could have got real ugly and my career would have been cut short. So instead, I chose to hide it, and I chose to self-medicate. So for me, it began with the alcohol and the marijuana. And it did work for me for a little while. For a little while, it seemed like it was calming down my anxiety and my hypervigilance and things like that. But it got out of control, and I wound up relying on it. And for 30 years, I suffered from homelessness, in and out of mental institutions, and being addicted to drugs. But that wasn't the end of the story. And that's what I want to leave you with, is that people that are seemingly in an incurable situation, all they might need is a little bit of love. And in my case, it came from a peer support specialist. But that position didn't exist yet. But this person was somebody who had been in my situation that I could identify with, and he had come out the other end, and he came out a lot better than he was when he went in. And it just lit a fire under my butt. And 7 years ago, I had begun to turn my life around. So a lot of these things that I accomplished educationally, they were just done in the last 7 years. Up until 7 years ago, I was one of those people that was considered hopelessly addicted. And people had wrote me off that I was never going to be any good. They didn't want to know what I had did before all of this came into my life. And they weren't interested in that I was running around with an untreated mental illness. So my position, what I do is usually as a peer support person, I am the first person that people come into contact with when they're trying to get some help with what they're dealing with, and they're interested in maybe changing their lives. And in me, they see credibility. Because when I can sit down and I can share my story with them, I give them hope that their life is not over. It could be just the beginning. You know, I used to really stress over, I remember during my moments of sanity, I was wondering why God was letting me go through all of this suffering and pain that I was going through when I knew that I was capable of doing better. Like what was it gonna take? And I gave up on myself, and I had a couple of suicide attempts. And I want to tell you, at that time, suicide did seem like a solution to me, but there's other solutions. And that's the message that I try to get across to people now that are considering suicide as a solution to their problems, is that, yeah, it does work, but it's such a final one. Let me show you some other ways that we can deal with your problem. So that's what I do. And when I share my story with them, it just gives me credibility, and I'm able to get through to them. So I'm more like a foot soldier. I'm like the infantry in this problem solving that we do. I like to go and I like to meet them where they're at. So I go to the missions and emergency rooms and anywhere else I got to go to carry the message. That's why I went through what I went through. It was to help other people. And I believe today that I can't keep the peace and the success that I have unless I do help other people. I'm not supposed to take what I got and just run into a closet and hoard it to myself. I'm supposed to go out there and I'm supposed to advocate, and be a voice for the people that can't speak for themselves. We have helped people that were seeking a solution just riding down the street and saw our sign and saw below "Here Tomorrow" it said a mental health collaborative, and they stopped in our office and we were able to help them. And they're our friends now.
The first step is to reduce barriers, right? Where to go, who to talk to, who to get help from, and who better than people who have had a lived experience, our peer support specialists. What next? As we are waiting to find help, we want someone to walk with us. We want someone to be with us there all the time. We know that this is a person we can rely on, which again brings us to the peer specialist. And then the third part is to get help as soon as possible. Help that doesn't require people being put in handcuffs. Help that doesn't mean waiting in a corridor of an emergency room for hours and hours. Help that doesn't mean where people from all different kinds of mental health problems are put in one corridor, in one unit, right? And supposed to get better. So hopefully avoiding all of those things by finding outpatient help as soon as we possibly can. That's what we're here for.
I was stationed here at Cecil Field, the Marine Corps Barracks. It was about 7:30 in the morning and all the Marines were lined up at the armory and were going out to the range that day to shoot. And I'm walking down the barracks, getting my men ready, and there was the third door left-hand side. It was room 206. I'll never forget this moment. And the door was slightly cracked, and as I walked in, one of my Marines was sitting on a chair, just right in front of me with a chair on either side. And I looked at him, he looked at me, and I said, "Eisenberg," I said, "let's go, let's get ready." And he just looked at me as he was sitting there and he said, "Hope you all that nobody cares about me." And I stood there, I didn't know what to say, and I just looked at him and I said, "I care about you." And 9mm on his lap. He slowly brought that 9mm up right to his chin. And as he looked at me in my eyes, I looked at him in his eyes. He said, "Maybe you're the only one." And he pulled the trigger. I live for that every day. And I'll tell you, as we lose people, we're going to save people too. Because that moment changed my life. I'm a firm believer that what we go through shapes you. What you experience, you either become a victim or a victor. You're either bitter or better. They didn't let me leave that room until 9 p.m. that night, 12 hours. I sat there in that room. I taste it every day. I see it every day. I hear it every day. But that moment shaped my life, where I decided then that I wanted to pay it forward. And so right after that divorce, I said, you know what? I need to talk to someone. If you don't speak it out, you end up acting it out. And that was when I started really investing in a therapist, a psychiatrist. I'll never forget, I'm sitting with a psychiatrist, and he had like 6 meetings, and the psychiatrist diagnosed me with bipolar type 2, major depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder. And that was like the best day of my life, because it was like, you mean I'm the problem? That's awesome. Maybe it wasn't my parents. Maybe it wasn't my brother or teachers, coaches. Maybe it wasn't my wife. It's me. Everybody has an office and a computer and a title. The reality is people don't care about titles. They don't care about research. They don't care about textbooks. They don't care. They want 2 questions answered. Can I trust you, and do you care about me?
If you want to go back about 3 years, when my son was suffering from depression, severe depression, and he would not, under any circumstance, go to a psychiatrist or anybody for help because that made him weak. That made him not a man. That was something he would not do. The only person he would talk to was me. And he told me that I was his only option, and he would be honest with me if I was honest with him, and if I wouldn't do anything without talking to him first. So what I did, I went to a psychiatrist for myself to be educated so that I could become, which later we figured out was a peer specialist. I went to a psychiatrist and said, teach me how to talk to him in the proper language so he can understand, so that I can help him. Because I don't understand. I don't. And he gave me a lot of words. He helped me. We worked on it. But at the end of the day, both my son Gary and I, we failed because Gary took his life. But I wasn't trained well enough. I tried my best to train up to do that. Mo had told me in one of our board meetings that, Joe, you actually were the first peer specialist that we had. You just didn't have enough time to become what you needed to be. And from that, we've pushed forward to develop something that we call a recovery peer specialist, someone who is certified, someone who can work with these people, who can help them, to truly can make them be here tomorrow.